The sprawling beige mansion stood like a monument to wealth, towering over manicured gardens and polished marble paths. But inside there was no laughter, no warmth, only the hollow ache of loss. For over a year, Richard Hale's life had revolved around one piece of cold metal, the black wheelchair that now defined his daughter's world. 5-year-old Emily, once a whirlwind of energy, curiosity, and giggles, had been paralyzed from the waist down after a devastating car accident. Her wild blonde curls framed a face that still held bright hazel eyes, but those eyes now stared for hours out of tall windows, watching life go on without her. Richard, a tall man in his early 40s with sharp features and a perfectly tailored white suit, had thrown his fortune into saving her. The best doctors, cutting-edge therapy, experimental treatments overseas. Nothing had worked. Each failure carved a deeper crack in him. He was a man who believed there was nothing in the world he couldn't fix. Until this. The afternoon sun spilled a soft golden light across the sprawling garden, warming the trimmed hedges and marble statues. Richard stepped outside, his polished shoes clicking lightly on the stone terrace. He expected to see the same scene he had grown painfully used to. Emily sitting still in her wheelchair, perhaps with a book on her lap, her gaze distant and hollow. But the moment his eyes found her, his stride faltered. Emily was laughing, not the gentle, polite chuckle she sometimes forced for his sake, but a real, full-bodied laugh that tumbled out of her like music, bright, unrestrained, and impossible to ignore. Her little hands clapped together with rapid bursts, and her cheeks glowed with a rosy warmth he hadn't seen in months. Then Richard saw what had brought this rare joy to life. Just a few feet in front of her, a barefoot boy no older than 9 spun and hopped across the grass. His skin, the warm bronze of sunlit earth, caught the light with every turn. A wild halo of black curls bounced around his head, framing a grin so wide it seemed almost too big for his face. His oversized olive-brown t-shirt hung loosely over a narrow frame, and the matching shorts flapped around knees marked with scrapes and faint scars, small badges of a rough and restless life. The boy danced in a way that defied rhythm and formality. He exaggerated each step as though the grass beneath him were a stage. He twisted his arms into ridiculous shapes, bent at the waist, spun in a wild whirl, and pretended to trip before catching himself in a dramatic save. Then he jabbed a playful finger toward Emily, as if daring her not to laugh. She failed instantly. Her laughter rang louder, her head tipping back in delight. Even more surprising to Richard, she leaned forward in her wheelchair, her back straight, her little body engaged. Her arms lifted slightly, moving as if to mimic his strange dance. And then, so subtle he almost missed it, her toes wiggled inside her sandals. It was a moment so small, yet so enormous, that Richard's chest tightened. This wasn't just a child entertaining her. This was something else entirely. Something alive. Richard's first instinct was sharp and immediate anger. This was his private property. No one got past the gates without his security team knowing. How had this boy slipped in, and why was he here, uninvited, dancing on his lawn? But then, Richard's eyes returned to Emily. Something stopped him cold. She wasn't sitting slouched in her chair like usual. Her small body leaned forward, her shoulders lifted, her hands clapping in rhythm. Her cheeks were flushed a healthy pink, and her eyes, those hazel eyes that had been dulled by months of sorrow, were lit with a spark he thought he might never see again. Richard's breath caught. The boy wasn't just making her laugh, he was pulling her into the moment, coaxing her to join in, as though every silly twist of his arms and every exaggerated leap was an invitation she couldn't refuse. Richard took a quiet step backward and slipped behind one of the marble columns lining the terrace. The stone felt cool against his palm as he gripped it, watching from the shadows. He didn't dare speak. Whatever this was, it felt fragile, like a delicate thread of magic that could snap if disturbed. The boy spun in a loose circle, then dropped to the grass, rolling dramatically before springing back to his feet. His bare toes gripped the earth as he skipped toward her, his grin wide, eyes never leaving hers. Emily's laughter swelled, spilling out in unrestrained waves until she had to wipe tears from her cheeks with the back of her hand. Richard's heart pounded, not with the usual weight of frustration, guilt, or helplessness, but with something far more dangerous: hope. It was small and trembling, as if afraid to take up too much space in his chest, but it was there. And for the first time in over a year, Richard let it stay. The next afternoon, Richard made a decision. No more hiding behind marble columns. He would see this boy face to face. Emily was already outside, her wheelchair positioned in the patch of garden where the sunlight poured over her like warm honey. Her curls caught the light, and there was a restless energy about her. Her head kept turning toward the gates, as if she were waiting for someone important. Then, like a shadow slipping into the scene, the boy appeared. He didn't come through the gates, but through a narrow gap in the hedge, his bare feet silent on the grass. His oversized olive-brown shirt looked dustier than the day before, his shorts creased and worn, but the grin on his face was fresh and unshakable. "Ready for the show?" he called, lifting his arms in an exaggerated stage bow. "Yes," Emily squealed, her hands clapping before the first move had even begun. But before he could take another step, Richard emerged from the terrace. His presence cut through the warm air like a ripple on still water. The boy froze mid-stride, his grin faltering. His eyes darted toward the gate, then back to Emily, and he swallowed hard. "I didn't mean—" "It's all right," Richard interrupted, his voice firm but without malice. "I just want to talk." Emily's head snapped toward him. "Daddy, please don't make him go," she pleaded, her voice carrying a rare urgency. "He's my friend." Richard crouched down so he was at the boy's eye level. "What's your name?" "Jay," the boy answered after a hesitant pause. "How old are you, Jay?" "9, I think." "You think?" Richard's brows lifted slightly. Jay's gaze flickered to Emily, then fell to the grass. "I don't have, a birthday cake or anything. Nobody ever told me." A faint, tight ache gripped Richard's chest. "Where do you live?" Jay shifted from one bare foot to another. "Around. Sometimes at the old bus station, sometimes in the laundry room at the apartments if no one's there. I just find places." Emily's hands gripped the arms of her wheelchair. "He's not bad, Daddy. He makes me happy." Richard studied her flushed cheeks and bright eyes, the way she was sitting straighter than usual, and he couldn't deny it. Something about this boy was changing her. "What were you doing here yesterday, Jay?" Richard asked. He hesitated, then said softly, "I was walking by and I heard music coming from your garden. I saw her sitting here, looking sad. So I started dancing. At first just to make her laugh, but then she told me to do more, so I came closer. I wasn't trying to steal anything, sir. I just—" His voice wavered. "She looked like she needed it." Richard turned back to Emily. "Sweetheart, how do you feel right now?" happy, like I can move again, even if I can't. And that's when Richard saw it, her toes twitching, a tiny but unmistakable movement. His breath caught in his throat. Richard didn't send Jay away. In fact, he gave his security team strict instructions. If the boy showed up, let him in. No questions, no delays. And so, every afternoon, Jay returned. Sometimes he arrived empty-handed, his only offering the boundless energy that seemed to spill from him like sunlight. Other days, he carried tiny treasures, a dented tin of crackers, a bruised apple, or a bottle of warm juice he'd found somewhere, always presenting them with a shy kind of pride, as though bringing tribute to a queen. The moment he stepped into the garden, the air changed. He danced in the most ridiculous, imaginative ways, his bare feet drumming the grass, his arms flailing in wild shapes. He told outrageous stories with cartoonish voices, made exaggerated faces, and doubled over in fake exhaustion only to leap back up again. Emily was no longer just a spectator. She lifted her arms high to mirror his movements, spun her wheelchair in tight little circles until the wheels hummed, and leaned forward so far Richard sometimes worried she might topple over. Her face was flushed with excitement, her giggles coming in bursts so strong she had to stop and catch her breath. The change was impossible to ignore. A week later, Emily's doctor arrived for a routine checkup. After examining her, he stepped back, blinking as though he couldn't quite believe his own findings. "Whatever you're doing," he told Richard, "keep doing it. This kind of emotional engagement, it's rare, and it's working." Richard said nothing, but his mind went immediately to a barefoot boy with wild curls and an unstoppable grin. One golden afternoon, as an old jazz tune played softly from the garden speakers, Jay danced in sweeping arcs across the grass. Emily's eyes followed every move. Suddenly, she placed both hands firmly on the armrests of her wheelchair. Richard noticed to shift instantly. His breath caught. With a determined push, she lifted herself, her small body trembling with effort until she was halfway out of the chair. The moment seemed to stretch, her curls falling forward, her lips pressed tight in concentration. She held herself there. 1 second, 2, 3. Then she collapsed back into the seat, panting, her chest rising and falling rapidly, but her face was lit with pure triumph. I did it, she gasped, her voice breathless but filled with pride. Jay's cheer was so loud it startled the birds from the hedges. "You're amazing," he shouted, spinning in a wild victory dance. Richard was beside her in an instant, dropping to his knees. His throat felt tight, his voice unsteady. "And so are you," he said softly, though he wasn't just speaking to Emily. His eyes found Jay, and in them was something the boy had never seen before. Gratitude so deep, it didn't need any more words. That night, Richard stepped outside and found Jay sitting alone on the back steps. The boy's shoulders were hunched, his knees pulled to his chest, as if the night air was the only blanket he owned. The quiet hum of crickets filled the space between them. "You can't keep living like this," Richard said gently, his deep voice carrying both concern and finality. Jay didn't even look up. "Been doing it my whole life," he replied, with a small shrug, as though hunger and cold were things you simply learned to live with. "Not anymore," Richard said firmly, stepping closer. "From today on, you're staying here. You'll have your own room, hot meals, clean clothes. You'll go to school. And more than anything," his voice softened, "you be part of this family." Jay finally lifted his head, his wide eyes searching Richard's face as if trying to find the catch. "Why?" he whispered. "You don't even know me." Richard's expression shifted, his tone low but steady. "Because you gave my daughter something no doctor, no therapy, and no amount of money could ever give her. You gave her hope. And I'm not going to let the boy who did that sleep on a cold floor again." Jay's lips trembled. He turned his face away quickly, but not fast enough to hide the shimmer of tears that had already formed. In that moment, the boy who had spent his life surviving finally heard the words he had never been told. "You belong somewhere." The next morning, sunlight streamed through the tall glass windows, painting the marble floors in warm gold. Outside, the once quiet garden was now filled with bursts of life. Jay spun and leapt across the grass with playful energy, his laughter echoing against the stone walls. Emily clapped her hands in rhythm, her cheeks flushed with joy, her eyes shining brighter than Richard had ever seen. Richard stood on the terrace, arms crossed loosely, watching them. A faint smile tugged at his lips, hesitant at first, then lingering. The heavy stillness that had weighed on the mansion for years was gone, replaced by the sound of giggles, the thud of Jay's sneakers on the lawn, and Emily's delighted squeals. For the first time in what felt like forever, the house didn't seem like a hollow monument to grief. It felt warm. It felt alive. It felt like home. We invite you to join Lightstories. If this story strikes a chord with you, makes you smile, or stirs up strong emotions in you, each story is meant to uplift, heal, and remind you of the beauty that comes from human connection. Share this story with someone who believes in kindness and second chances by clicking the subscribe button and turning on the notification bell. Keep your heart open till we cross paths again, because you never know when someone might ask, "Can I join you here?"